The Battle of Gettysburg. The bloodiest battle fought on American soil and, for many historians, the turning point of the Civil War. For 3 brutal days in July of 1863, the rolling hills of Pennsylvania became a battlefield where 165,000 Union and Confederate soldiers clashed under the scorching summer sun. By the end of it, nearly 50,000 men lay dead, wounded, or missing. The Union Army had prevailed, and the Confederate forces under General Robert E. Lee had begun their retreat back to Virginia. But what if it hadn't gone that way? What if the South had seized victory on those fateful days at Gettysburg? Would the course of the Civil War, and perhaps even the entire history of the United States, have been irrevocably altered? Today we're diving deep into the Battle of Gettysburg, exploring the crucial moments and missed opportunities that could have turned the tide for the Confederate Army. To understand why Gettysburg was such a pivotal moment, we first have to look at the circumstances leading up to the battle. In the summer of 1863, Robert E. Lee led his Army of Northern Virginia into Union territory, hoping to strike a decisive blow that would shatter Northern morale, compel European powers like Britain and France to recognize the Confederacy, and ultimately bring the South closer to victory. It was a bold gambit, but Lee was riding high after his triumphs at Fredericksburg and Chancellorsville earlier that year. His army was confident, battle-hardened, and determined to end the war on their terms. Meanwhile, the Union forces, led by Major General George G. Meade, trailed Lee's army, desperate to intercept it. On July 1st, the two armies collided near the small town of Gettysburg. What began as a skirmish quickly escalated into one of the largest and deadliest battles of the Civil War. By the end of the first day, the Confederates had gained the upper hand. They drove the Union forces back through the town of Gettysburg, forcing them to take up defensive positions on the high ground south of the town. But here lies the first major turning point, an opportunity missed for Lee's army. General Richard Ewell, one of Lee's corps commanders, was ordered to take the high ground if practicable. These high ridges, including Cemetery Hill and Culp's Hill, were crucial defensive positions that would later prove instrumental to the Union's victory. But Ewell hesitated, citing exhaustion among his troops and the arrival of fresh Union reinforcements. He ultimately decided not to pursue the attack, allowing the Union forces to dig in and fortify their positions overnight. Historians have debated this decision endlessly, and many agree that had Ewell seized the initiative, the Confederates might have controlled the high ground and forced Meade's army into a weaker position. Day 2 of the battle dawned with both armies entrenched in their respective positions, the Union Army forming a defensive fishhook along Cemetery Hill, Culp's Hill, Cemetery Ridge, and Little Round Top. Lee saw an opportunity to break through the Union lines with a coordinated assault on both flanks. He ordered General James Longstreet to lead the attack on the left flank, aiming to capture Little Round Top, while Confederate forces under General Ewell were tasked with attacking the Union right flank at Culp's Hill. But here, another missed opportunity emerged. Longstreet, one of Lee's most trusted generals, was reluctant to carry out the attack. He felt strongly that the Confederates should maneuver around the Union forces and try to lure them into weaker ground, rather than assaulting such a strong position head-on. Longstreet argued his case but ultimately followed Lee's orders. His attack was delayed, giving Union forces enough time to reinforce their positions on Little Round Top. When the Confederates did attack, they were met with fierce resistance, most famously by the 20th Maine Infantry Regiment under Colonel Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, who defended Little Round Top in a bold bayonet charge that became the stuff of legend. On the right flank, Ewell once again proved unable to break through the Union defenses at Culp's Hill. Ultimately, Lee's plan for the second day failed, costing the Confederates valuable momentum. But the battle wasn't over yet. On the third and final day, Lee staked everything on one last desperate gamble, an all-out assault on the center of the Union line at Cemetery Ridge. This maneuver, known as Pickett's Charge, has been etched into Civil War history as the epitome of valor and tragedy. The plan was simple, a massive artillery barrage followed by a direct infantry attack, but it was fundamentally flawed. Despite the Confederates' artillery bombardment, Union defenses held strong, and when the infantry advanced, they were cut down by a deadly combination of rifle and cannon fire. Roughly 12,500 Confederate soldiers marched into the storm, and in less than an hour, the charge collapsed, leaving the battlefield littered with Confederate dead and wounded. Historians often point to Pickett's charge as the fatal blow to Lee's campaign. But the question remains, why did Lee commit to such a risky strategy? Some argue that Lee underestimated the Union's position, believing his troops could break their lines and exploit the opening. Others suggest Lee didn't have many options left, as the Confederate forces were running low on supplies and morale. Regardless, the decision proved disastrous, and the dream of a Southern victory at Gettysburg was shattered. But it's worth noting that Lee wasn't entirely to blame for the missed opportunities at Gettysburg. The Confederate Army was plagued by poor communication and coordination among its commanders. Decisive battles require decisive leadership, and while Lee's boldness had often served him well in the past, at Gettysburg, it led him down a perilous path. His orders throughout the battle were vague, leaving subordinates like Ewell and Longstreet unsure of how to proceed. Union forces, on the other hand, benefited from strong defensive strategies and the advantage of holding the high ground. In the aftermath of Gettysburg, Lee's Army of Northern Virginia retreated across the Potomac River, battered and demoralized. The battle marked the end of Lee's northern campaign and turned the tide of the war firmly in the Union's favor. Though the Confederate cause continued for nearly 2 more years, Gettysburg marked the moment when the South's dream of independence began to slip out of reach. Gettysburg remains a testament to the fragility of human endeavor, a battle where courage and tragedy converged to decide the fate of a nation. So was the Battle of Gettysburg the turning point of the Civil War? Yes, but as we've seen, it wasn't an inevitable Union victory. The South had opportunities, several in fact, to turn the tide in their favor. Whether it was Ewell's hesitation on the first day, Longstreet's delayed attack on the second, or Lee's gamble with Pickett's charge on the third, the outcome of Gettysburg could have been very different had those moments played out another way. Gettysburg could have been the South's victory had those moments played out another way. History is full of what-ifs, and Gettysburg is one of the most fascinating. What if the Confederates had taken the high ground early in the battle? What if Longstreet had convinced Lee to adopt a different strategy? What if Pickett's charge had broken through the Union line? Would the South have won the Civil War? Would America, as we know it today, even exist? These questions linger, reminding us that history is shaped not just by actions, but also by choices. Choices made in moments of uncertainty, when the stakes could not be higher. Gettysburg remains a testament to the fragility of human endeavor, a battle where courage and tragedy converged to decide the fate of a nation. History is full of what-ifs, and Gettysburg is one of the most fascinating. What if the Confederates had taken the high ground early in the battle? What if Longstreet had convinced Lee to adopt a different strategy? What if Pickett's charge had broken through the Union line? Would the South have won the Civil War? Would America, as we know it today, even exist? These questions linger, reminding us that history is shaped not just by actions, but also by choices. Choices made in moments of uncertainty, when the stakes could not be higher. Gettysburg remains a testament to the fragility of human endeavor, a battle where courage and tragedy converge to decide the fate of a nation.